We're going to break down Parkinson's disease, but not with some dry textbook definition. Nope, we're going to follow the journey of a single patient, a real clinical case. This way, we can connect the really complex science of the brain directly to the human experience of the disease.
So, our story kicks off right here, with a 72-year-old man. For a little while now, he's been noticing some subtle but, persistent changes. He's finally at his doctor's office, trying to figure out what's really going on. This is that crucial first step.
All right, so what exactly brought him through the door? Let's take a look at the very first signs that he and his family started to notice. These initial clues are absolutely critical for a doctor to start piecing this whole puzzle together.
Now, what's so telling here are the details of the symptoms. I mean, sure, he has a tremor, but it's a very specific kind. They call it a pill-rolling tremor, almost like he's rolling a tiny pill between his thumb and forefinger. And here's the key. It's most obvious when he's at rest, and it actually disappears when he goes to do something. His family also mentioned this general slowing down. And that last point is just as important. Ruling out other potential causes, like a head injury or certain meds, really starts pointing the investigation toward what's known as idiopathic Parkinson's disease.
Okay, so those are the signs you can see on the outside. But the real story, the one that matters most, is happening deep inside the brain. So the big question becomes, what's the underlying cause of all this? What's going on internally?
Well, the answer starts right here, in a tiny part of the midbrain called the substantia nigra. You can think of it as the brain's very own dopamine factory. And dopamine is this incredible neurotransmitter that acts like the oil in an engine, making sure all the motor circuits that control our movements run smoothly and stay perfectly balanced. So here's the core of the problem. In Parkinson's disease, the very neurons that produce all that dopamine, well, they start to wither away and die. The dopamine factory begins to shut down, and that leads to a major shortage. This lack of dopamine is exactly what throws the brain's ability to control movement completely out of whack. And if we could zoom in even closer, right inside these struggling neurons, we'd find these things, Lewy bodies. They're basically these abnormal clumps of protein that just gum up the cell's machinery, eventually contributing to its death. Finding these is a huge microscopic signpost for Parkinson's, and honestly, figuring out why these proteins go rogue is a major focus for all neurodegenerative disease research. So, we've got the cause, a dopamine shortage deep in the brain. Now let's connect the dots. How does that internal problem lead directly to the classic physical signs that our patient is experiencing?
And this table just lays it out perfectly. These are the 4 cardinal motor signs that a clinician is looking for. And our patient, he checks every box. First, that resting tremor we talked about. Second, bradykinesia, which is just a fancy word for slowness of movement. Third, rigidity, where the muscles are stiff. A doctor might feel this cogwheel catch and release pattern when moving the patient's arm. And finally, postural instability. His reflexes are impaired, which makes balance tricky and, really increases the risk of falls.
But of those 4 signs, it's often the bradykinesia that has the biggest, most frustrating impact on daily life. Simple things we take for granted, like buttoning a shirt or writing your name, can become incredibly slow. It can even affect facial muscles, leading to fewer spontaneous expressions, what doctors call a mask-like face, and even a decrease in how often you blink. For our patient, this is that slowing down his family was talking about. So, we have a pretty clear diagnosis. The next logical question is, what can we do about it? How do we help our patient manage these symptoms? Well, thankfully, there's a really clever solution. Here's the puzzle. You can't just give a patient a dopamine pill. The brain has this super selective security system called the blood-brain barrier, and it just won't let dopamine in. So scientists came up with this brilliant workaround. They use levodopa, or L-dopa, which is a precursor to dopamine. Think of it like a molecular Trojan horse that can sneak past the barrier. Once it's safely inside the brain, it gets converted into the dopamine that's so desperately needed. But wait, there's another challenge. Enzymes in our body are eager to convert levodopa into dopamine before it even gets a chance to reach the brain. And that's no good. It doesn't help with movement, and it can cause side effects like nausea. That's where carbidopa comes in. It acts like a bodyguard, blocking that conversion process everywhere except inside the brain. This makes sure more levodopa gets to its target, and those side effects are kept to a minimum. It is an absolutely brilliant 1-2 punch. And here is the real clincher for our patient. He starts this treatment, the levodopa-carbidopa combo, and his response is described as dramatic.
His tremor settles down, his movements get quicker, smoother. This incredible improvement isn't just a treatment success, it's also a key piece of diagnostic confirmation. It solidifies the Parkinson's diagnosis beyond a doubt.
So, with treatment working, what does the future look like for our patient? Well, while the treatment is a game changer, it's really important to understand the long-term nature of the disease itself. See, Parkinson's is a progressive neurodegenerative disorder. And what that means is, unfortunately, the underlying process, the loss of those neurons, it continues. So while the treatment does an amazing job managing the symptoms by replacing that lost dopamine, it doesn't actually stop the disease from progressing. Right now, there is no cure.
But, and this is the key takeaway, the most important part, despite being progressive, this is not a story without hope. Far from it. An early diagnosis, just like in our patient's case, and really effective ongoing management, medication, therapy, lifestyle changes, it can all make a huge difference, allowing people to maintain a high quality of life for many, many years.
And that brings us to our final thought, a look to the future. This case gives us a perfect snapshot of where we are today. But as our understanding of the brain's incredible wiring gets deeper and deeper, it poses this fascinating question. What's next? What new therapies and strategies are just over the horizon, not just to manage, but maybe, one day, to actually halt or even reverse diseases like Parkinson's?